There's a certain kind of woman whose presence feels almost effortless, almost untouched by struggle. And yet, if you look closely, really look closely, you'll notice something in the way she breathes. A slight heaviness, a quiet fatigue, a softness wrapped in silence. She is the kind of woman who moves through her days almost invisibly. Not because she lacks light, but because she's learned to dim hers just enough to keep from drawing attention to the parts of herself she's not ready to share. She is the woman who pretends she's fine, the one who has mastered the art of appearing okay, even when her world feels like it's collapsing beneath her feet. And somehow, the world believes her, because she makes being fine look so gentle, so practiced, so effortless, that most people never think to question it. But behind that quiet exterior is a heart that has weathered storms privately, quietly, almost too gracefully. This is the woman who doesn't want to inconvenience anyone with her pain. The woman who apologizes for crying before the first tear even falls. The woman who tells you not to worry, even when worry is exactly what she needs. She is the silent fighter, the emotional contortionist. The kind of person who holds herself together with trembling hands, but still manages to comfort others with the steadiness of someone who looks untouched by pain. She is the one who says, "I'm fine," because the truth feels too heavy, too complicated, too vulnerable to place into the open air. You might recognize her. You might be her. And her story doesn't begin with adulthood. It begins years before that, often in childhood, in moments so subtle that she doesn't even realize their weight until much later in life. Maybe she grew up in a home where emotions made people uncomfortable, where crying was dismissed as drama, where sadness was met with impatience, where anger was mocked or punished, where showing vulnerability only led to awkwardness, tension, or punishment. So she learned early, holding it in is safer than letting it out. Staying quiet is easier than asking for comfort. Composure avoids conflict. Silence avoids misunderstanding. Some women learned to hide their pain because no one around them knew how to receive it. Some learned because the adults in their lives were too consumed with their own struggles to notice theirs. Others learned because every time they did express emotion, it somehow made them feel smaller, weaker, or guilty. So she adapted. She learned to comfort herself. She learned to swallow her voice. She learned that the world responds better when she's strong, composed, collected. And then, as she got older, life continued reinforcing the lesson. Friends praised her for being the calm one. Family praised her for being independent. Partners admired her resilience. She became the reliable one, the stable one, the woman who people come to when their world falls apart, ironically never realizing that she has no one to turn to when hers does. If you've ever watched a woman like this closely during a difficult moment, you know how hauntingly beautiful her strength looks. She doesn't break down. She doesn't scream. She doesn't crumble. She goes quiet. She breathes carefully. She nods slowly. She says things like, "It's okay. I'll work through it." Or, "I just need some time." But what you don't see, what she never lets you see, is the way her heart races when she's alone. The way she sits in the car after a long day and feels the weight in her chest pressing against her ribcage like some invisible pressure she never learned how to release. The way she cries only after she knows she won't be interrupted. The way she feels afraid, not of the pain itself, but of what it might mean if she lets it out. You see her strength, but you don't see the cost of it. Emotional masking, psychologists call it, the habit of concealing true feelings behind a carefully crafted exterior. But masking isn't pretending, it's surviving. It's the result of growing up in environments where honesty was unsafe. It's the residue of relationships where vulnerability was punished or misunderstood. It's the instinctive reaction of someone who has learned the hard way that not everyone can be trusted with their truth. And the truth is, she feels everything. Deeply, intensely, sometimes overwhelmingly. She notices details others overlook. She picks up emotional shifts in the room like a human radar. She carries empathy like a second skin. And she hurts, not just for herself, but for others. Her pain is not loud or dramatic. It is a quiet, persistent ache. The kind that sits beneath her calm voice and gentle demeanor. But because she feels so deeply, she suppresses so intensely. Imagine her at work, receiving criticism that others would shrug off. She smiles, nods, takes notes, says thank you. But inside, the words echo in places connected to old wounds. Places where she once felt unworthy, unseen, or never good enough. She carries the weight silently. She performs her responsibilities well. She appears composed. But when she gets home, she feels the exhaustion of managing emotions that had nowhere to go. Or imagine her in a relationship, trying to communicate something that hurts. She starts the sentence, stops, apologizes, downplays her own feelings. She says things like, "It's not a big deal," or "Forget I said anything." Not because the issue doesn't matter, but because she worries she'll appear too sensitive, too needy, too emotional. Somewhere along the line, she learned that people leave when emotions surface. So she hides them, hoping someone will stay. But suppression is not healing, and silence is not strength. Silence often becomes a cage, a place where she hides not only her pain, but her true self. And the longer she hides, the more invisible she feels. She becomes the woman who is always there for others, but rarely shows up for herself. The woman who listens to everyone's problems, but never mentions her own. The woman who comforts others with words she aches to hear. The woman who is emotionally present, but emotionally unreceived. The woman who gives more than she takes. The woman who knows how to hold other people's broken pieces, but doesn't know how to ask who will hold hers. Over time, this self-sacrifice becomes identity. It becomes personality. It becomes habit. And habits, especially emotional ones, are hard to break. But here's something she may not know. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They resurface in patterns. She may find herself pushing people away without realizing it. She may choose emotionally unavailable partners because vulnerability still feels unsafe. She may overthink small things because she's constantly trying to avoid conflict. She may cling to independence because asking for help still feels like weakness. She may become hyper-resilient because she believes she has no other choice. And yet, for all her fear of vulnerability, she aches to be understood. She longs for someone who sees beneath her silence, someone who notices the slight tremble in her voice when she says she's tired, someone who understands that she's not distant, she's guarded, someone who sees that she's not always strong. She just doesn't know how to be anything else. Maybe she hasn't met that person yet. Or maybe she has, but she's too afraid to let them all the way in. Because letting someone in means letting someone see the parts of herself she has buried for years. It means letting someone witness her insecurities, her doubts, her fears. It means risking disappointment, abandonment, rejection. And for someone who learned early that emotional openness leads to pain, that risk feels terrifying. So, she hides. Because hiding feels safe. Not happy, but safe. But there's another part of her, one she tries very hard to ignore. A small voice inside that whispers when she's tired late at night. A quiet longing for softness, for rest, for release, for someone to say, "You don't always have to be strong." For a feeling of safety deep enough that she could let her guard down without fear of consequences. She may not know it, but that longing is the beginning of healing. Healing for a woman like her doesn't begin with crying. It begins with permission. Permission to feel. Permission to ask. Permission to rest. Permission to be human. Healing begins with small cracks in the armor she has worn for years. Maybe the crack appears during a conversation with someone who truly listens. Maybe it appears during a moment when she finally allows herself to cry without apology. Maybe it appears when she admits, quietly, softly, to herself, "I'm not okay." Maybe it appears when she realizes that being strong has never been the problem. Being isolated has. There is a moment, a powerful one, when she finally recognizes that she cannot keep carrying everything alone. And in that moment, something shifts. She opens, not dramatically, not completely, but enough for air to reach the parts of her that have been suffocating. She begins to see that vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a bridge, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, she learns that she deserves these things. She deserves a life where she does not have to shrink her feelings to maintain peace. She deserves a life where she is cared for, not just caring. She deserves relationships where truth feels safe. She deserves softness. She deserves understanding. She deserves rest. She deserves a heart that doesn't have to hide to be accepted. Imagine her years later, sitting in the same mirror where she once stood, wiping away makeup with tired hands. But this time, something is different. Her reflection isn't someone performing strength. It's someone becoming whole. Her eyes look softer. Her shoulders rest a little easier. She can say, "I'm overwhelmed," without guilt. She can say, "I need support," without shame. She can say, "I'm hurting," without believing it makes her weak. She still has difficult days. She still has silent battles. But now she doesn't fight them alone. Now she knows she deserves hands beside hers, hearts beside hers. She knows that being human is not a burden, it's a shared experience. And you, listening to this, you may recognize yourself in her story. You may be the woman who hides her pain behind quiet smiles. You may be the woman who learned to be strong too early. You may be the woman who carries everything alone because you believe you must. You may be the woman who wants to be soft but doesn't know how anymore. You may be the woman whose soul aches for understanding, even when her mouth says she's fine. If that's you, then here's what you need to hear. You don't need permission to feel, but you are allowed to give it to yourself. You don't have to wait for someone to understand you completely in order to begin healing. You don't have to carry the world alone to be worthy of love. You don't have to shrink your truth to be accepted. You don't have to perform strength to be valued. You don't have to be invincible to be enough. And if you've hidden your pain for so long that you no longer know how to express it, that's okay. You can start small. Whisper your feelings to yourself. Write them down. Acknowledge them privately. Sit with them gently. You don't need to open up all at once. You just need to stop burying yourself alive. You're not too sensitive. You're not too emotional. You're not asking for too much. You're a human being, learning to feel safely after years of surviving silently. And there is so much courage in that. Healing doesn't mean you'll never say, "I'm fine" again. It means you'll say it only when it's true. It means you'll know the difference between strength and suppression. It means you'll choose honesty, not because it's easy, but because you finally trust that your emotions deserve space. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll realize that the battles you once fought in silence no longer own you, that the weight you carried alone has become lighter because you finally allowed someone, maybe even yourself, to share it with you. That the woman who once hid her pain is now the woman who honors it. So if you're listening to this right now, feeling that ache in your chest, feeling that familiar tightening in your throat, feeling that quiet exhaustion that comes from pretending, this is your reminder that you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to fight silently. You don't have to hide your heart to be loved. You don't have to be fine to be worthy. You just have to be honest with yourself, with someone safe, with the parts of you that you've avoided for too long. Because even the strongest woman deserves a place where she can fall apart softly and be held gently. Maybe this is your time to stop hiding. Maybe this is your moment to breathe. Maybe this is where your healing begins. And if no one has told you this before, let me be the one. You are allowed to be seen. You are allowed to be heard. You are allowed to be vulnerable. You are allowed to be loved. Not for your strength, but for your truth. And you, exactly as you are worth that love.